So it looks like we have a date, April the 28th, which would mean a short campaign. Good strategy for Mark Carney. What do you make of what we know so far?
It's the shortest campaign possible under the new rules. We had one that was 12 weeks long with Mr. Harper and Mr. Trudeau back in 2015, but of course they changed those rules. So it was going to be somewhere in the 5 to 7 week range. There are some strategic reasons to go fast, and that's probably what his advisors have been telling him. Just get it done. Your numbers are high. Go in, get it done fast. Go after Poilievre during that time. Others were saying, well, perhaps give the public a little bit more time to discover the discreet charms of Pierre Poilievre, who sometimes can be a bit snippy, as everybody can, because they all get tired in politics. We even saw Carney having one of those episodes this week. But overall, the thinking was give people as little time as possible to change their minds from where we are, because generally speaking, Marcia, an election campaign and polls end up where they started. And right now, the Liberals look like they could win this one. They're several points ahead in the most recent polling of several companies.
Almost unheard of 2 months ago.
Oh,
double-digit lead.
If you had taken this to a betting parlor,
right,
you could have made a lot of money. I don't think that there's anybody who would have predicted this. And it's really going to have a very tough effect on my former party, the NDP, because as voters on the progressive side, center left, were looking at these things as they were shaping up, with the Conservatives 25 points ahead, the NDP had a reasonable hope of saying, look, come over to us this time. Don't waste your vote on the Liberals. They got no chance against the Conservatives. But now, for almost the same reason, the exact opposite is happening, as it looks like the Liberals do have a real possibility of forming the next government. People on the progressive side are saying, sorry, NDP, love you dearly, might come back to you, but right now, if there's a chance of stopping Poilievre, we're going to vote strategically. Now, that drives NDP leaders nuts, because I can tell you, it used to drive me nuts when I would hear those strategic voting arguments. But I think that they're more salient than ever. They're going to go through with a lot of Canadians right now, because Poilievre is not your ordinary Conservative. He is hard-bitten. He is harder right than even Scheer or O'Toole. And I think that people on the progressive side are saying, well, this is an opportunity to put a roadblock up for him.
And there's been a lot of talk about his, Pierre Poilievre's inability really to pivot, that he's still sort of using the same tactics or strategy that he used with Trudeau now on Mark Carney. But nonetheless, as we enter a campaign, the Conservatives will adjust. How do you think they will frame Mark Carney? And to your point about Mark Carney getting a little bit testy the other day in London with reporters, I think it was in London, it was around questions around his personal assets and how much he needs to disclose. Is that a weakness for him, Tom, that you think the Conservatives will grab onto?
Well, they certainly were successful in sticking it to him over that. The core of that question is the following. The rules as they exist didn't really contemplate somebody coming into office as prime minister without having been elected, without having made the disclosures the elected officials have to make. So Carney was following the rules as they exist, but then journalists were saying, and the Conservatives were implying, yeah, but shouldn't there be more? So he is, according to what we've learned, in conversations with the ethics commissioner to put in place what they were calling screens, to put in place rules that would allow him to face the electorate and say, I've been as transparent as I will be required to be, or any other elected person would be required to be. So on one hand, it was a bit unfair to ask him to obey rules that don't exist. On the other hand, he's now in a different world, and he's got to understand that transparency is the norm. The public has a right to know, and he has every interest, personal interest, in telling people what his financial interests are, because people won't hold it against him. There are some people in politics who have had great careers and have made money. It's not the end of the world. But I think that he's used to the world where you go into a press conference, you give your Sibylline phrases, and you explain this word and that word, and people guess whether or not there's going to be a rate change, for example, at the central bank. Well, that's no longer the case. He's going to face journalists now and during the campaign. We're going to ask him tough questions, and he's just going to have to, that's part of of the learning process. He's got unbelievable experience in government, in the private sector, and even at the United Nations. But at the same time, he doesn't have a lot of experience as a politician. So it's a learning process for him, but I figure he's going to figure it out. Poilievre, just the opposite, tremendous experience almost exclusively as a politician, and he's a very good politician, but very little real-world experience. So we'll see how the Canadian voting public measures up those two curriculum vitae, those two resumes in their voting.
Tom Mulcair for us. He is CTV News political commentator. Tom, as always, good to chat with you this morning.
Great.